In order to give you a sense of what the Elizabethan Theater was like during Shakespeare's time, Sarah and I have decided to travel back in time to London in the year 1600. Shakespeare is in his late 30s and about halfway through his professional career.
6 years earlier, Shakespeare, along with 8 other actors, founded the Lord Chamberlain's Men, which has since established itself as the most successful acting company in London. They recently moved into their new theatre, the Globe, which we're going to visit, but not just yet.
Had we traveled back in time just 25 years earlier, we wouldn't have found any building in London that you could properly call a theatre or playhouse. The few plays that were then performed took place in the kind of establishment that you see behind us, the Boar's Head Inn.
There were 5 or 6 of these large public inns around London, and in the large central courtyard, the proprietor occasionally arranged entertainment for his customers, which sometimes consisted of a troupe of actors who received compensation from the innkeeper for boosting alcohol sales, along with whatever they could collect from the audience.
One of these itinerant actors was one of those rare men who changed history by combining an inspired vision with entrepreneurial skill. His name was James Burbidge, and with only slight exaggeration, he has been called the father of the English language theatre.
Burbidge may have been inspired by ancient Rome, whose grandest theatres were among the empire's most impressive architectural monuments, seating over 10,000 spectators, and whose leading dramatist, Seneca, was both a renowned philosopher and a leading statesman.
But James Burbidge, a carpenter by trade, was nothing if not a practical businessman, and his business model probably came from an immensely popular and profitable form of entertainment at the time: bear baiting.
Here we are inside the Paris Garden, one of the more famous bear-baiting arenas. A bear would be chained to a stake in the middle of the ring, and then a pack of hunting dogs was set loose to attack it.
To our modern sensibilities, bear baiting is a repugnant blood sport. But in 16th century England, it was big business and popular with all the social classes. Even Queen Elizabeth enjoyed entertaining foreign dignitaries with bear baiting at Whitehall Palace.
With bear baiting arenas as a starting point, Burbidge designed and built a structure specifically for the performance of plays. He called it the theatre, a word that at the time referred to those open-air semicircular stone arenas the Romans used.
Burbidge's theatre could accommodate an audience of around 2,000, many times more than a public inn. And when his acting company took up permanent residence there, the modern English theatre was born. By 1600, the theatre industry is flourishing, boasting 5 or 6 large theatres similar to Burbidge's original design.
But not everyone looks favorably on this new form of public entertainment. London officials opposed the theatres and eventually banned the performance of all plays anywhere inside official city limits. One of their concerns is that the theatres attract the criminal class.
Psst. How about an ounce of pure Virginia tobacco? Just 3 shillings.
No thanks, we're good.
Another concern is with public health, and for good reason. With no sewer system to speak of, London is a filthy, unhygienic, overcrowded city. The worst disaster to ever afflict Europe occurred 2 centuries earlier when the bubonic plague first arrived. Within 2 years, it killed almost half the population of Europe.
Periodic outbreaks of the plague continued to ravage European cities all the way up until the 19th century. 3 years from now, in the summer of 1603, one such outbreak will kill 38,000 Londoners, 20% of the city's population.
Though it will be centuries before the exact cause of bubonic plague is understood, a bacteria that resides in rats and their fleas, officials know the disease spreads easily.
So, when the death count reaches a certain level, all large public gatherings are banned.
3 times during Shakespeare's career, the theatres will be closed for periods ranging from several months to 2 years.
But in addition to concerns about crime and public health, some Londoners opposed the new theatres on moral grounds.
Just as in America today, Elizabethan society had a small but vocal religious right, militants from the new fundamentalist sect of Christianity, Protestantism.
These Puritans, as they were called, think it's against God's natural order for men to portray what they are not, particularly for young boy actors to dress as women for the female roles.
And their Protestant work ethic is offended by actors who create nothing of tangible value and, what's worse, who seduce real workers to idle away their time in mere entertainment.
Despite all these obstacles, the theaters have prospered. Let's step inside the Globe and see what one is like. To prevent the doorkeepers from pocketing some of the receipts, the spectators drop their penny admission fee through this slot.
1 penny doesn't sound like much, but it's a little more than the average hourly wage and equal to about twice what we'd pay for a movie ticket.
For that penny, you get to stand in this area in front of the stage, while the more well-to-do pay an additional penny to sit in these tiered galleries.
It's a lot like what we call a theater in the round, until you look up.
Since it's not practical to artificially illuminate this large a space, it's necessary to leave most of the roof open and schedule performances during daylight.
And since this is London, that makes for a lot of damp performances.
As we mentioned, the Globe is the permanent home of the acting company, the Lord Chamberlain's Men.
Unlike the modern theatre, where actors are hired for a particular play, an actor in the Elizabethan Theater tried to become a shareholding member of a permanent acting company, where he likely would stay for his entire career.
These sharers, as they're called, are equal business partners in the enterprise. After giving a fixed percentage of the box office to the theater owners, and the fixed expenses are paid, the sharers split any remaining profits among themselves.
Acting companies with poor attendance have meager or non-existent profits. But if the acting company is popular, then both the theatre owner and sharers do quite well.
The Lord Chamberlain's Men attract huge audiences and become the only acting company successful enough to construct their own theater, which means they don't have to share any profits with the theater landlord.
Now that the Globe has opened, Shakespeare and his fellow sharers are each earning the equivalent of about $1 million a year.
Not bad for the son of a glovemaker who arrived in London 12 years earlier with little education, money, or contacts.
But the Lord Chamberlain's Men faces stiff competition from other companies such as the Queen's Men and the Admiral's Men.
You've probably surmised from the company names that each one of these is associated with a powerful nobleman. But these noble patrons have essentially no artistic or financial relationship with the companies.
In fact, this new theatre industry is representative of an emerging and soon-to-be vital part of the British economy, capitalism and free enterprise.
So how does Shakespeare's Company entice the average Londoner to pay an hour's wages, give up an afternoon of work, and stand up through a 3-hour performance in the drizzling rain?
One clue is this week's schedule here at the Globe. 5 different plays. In fact, Shakespeare and his fellow actors are currently performing 9 plays in rotation, and before this year is out, they will have performed 30 different plays.
To a modern actor, who performs 1 play at a time and maybe 5 in a year, this is an almost unimaginable feat of memory, and a reminder to us of how important oral culture was in Shakespeare's day.
So why this frequent rotation of plays in Elizabethan theatres? It's all in the numbers.
With their surrounding population and a large number of tourists, modern-day New York and London can each draw on a potential audience of about 20 million.
But the population of 1600 London is only 1% of that, about the size of current-day Grand Rapids, Michigan.
So, while a play in New York can run for 4 months playing to a new audience every night, the Globe Theatre has to attract repeat customers by offering a large selection of plays. But where do all these plays come from?
Since the industry is still young, there isn't a large repertoire of old classics to draw upon. So the acting companies need to commission new plays, lots of them. But by whom?
Though the printing press was invented over a century earlier, and the publishing industry has grown steadily ever since, it's only now that we see the emergence of the first professional writers. That is, men able to make a living just from their writing.
This development is due in large part to the huge demand for new plays by the acting companies, and to their ability to pay handsomely for them.
Initially, this new writing profession was composed mainly of a group we've come to call the university wits, because they were graduates of either Oxford or Cambridge.
You might think that university students during this period come from the very wealthy classes, but a few, like our new dramatists, came from modest families and had to make a living from their education.
They found that writing plays was much more lucrative than being a school headmaster, and at least 2 of them, Robert Greene and Christopher Marlowe, found it much more fun reveling in that tawdry underworld across the Thames River where their new benefactors were located.
Thinking of themselves as following in the footsteps of the famous ancient Greek and Roman poets, the group wrote grand tragedies about heroic historical figures, often favoring rhetorical style over literary substance.
They were also a pretty snobbish bunch. Robert Greene, in a letter addressed to his fellow writers, publicly denounced theater actors, or players as they were called, as uneducated journeymen. And he singled out one actor in particular, disdainfully labeling him a theatrical jack-of-all-trades, a Johannes factotum, for having the audacity to attempt to write plays as well as act in them.
For there is an upstart crow, beautified with our feathers, that with his tiger's heart wrapped in a player's hide, supposes he is as well able to bombast out a blank verse as the best of you, and being an absolute Johannes factotum, is, in his own conceit, the only shake scene in a country.
That upstart crow is, of course, the new kid in town, William Shakespeare.
But the demand for new plays is much too large to be limited by class prejudice or academic credentials, so by this time, London has an eclectic group of professional playwrights cranking out 40 plays a year for sale to the acting companies.
With pressing deadlines and so much money to be made, it's not surprising that some writers resorted to an assembly line production process.
Like a writing team for television shows, they start with a formulaic plot and then divide up the scenes for quick writing. As you might guess, the results are often less than memorable.
While on the other end of the quality spectrum, you have, well, Shakespeare. The Lord Chamberlain's men were lucky enough to count on their talented in-house playwright for 2 excellent plays each year.
So almost overnight, the theatre has established itself as a dominant part of English culture. But is it, as the university wits have proclaimed, a renaissance of the highest form of literary expression? Or is it, as the Puritans protest, something akin to bear baiting, just idle and immoral entertainment for the emerging middle class?
One thing's for sure, the Elizabethan Theater changed the way its audience saw themselves and the world around them.
Comedies pointed out the silliness and vanities in their society.
The histories instructed them on their country's past and helped create for the first time a sense of English national identity.
And the tragedies caused them to reflect on the internal struggles and external dilemmas they faced in an increasingly uncertain and complex world.
On an even deeper level, one could argue that this rebirth of theater reflected a change in our very sense of self. Society was becoming more and more a place where we put on roles, where, like an actor, we have to step into new and evolving identities.
Unlike the Middle Ages, where everyone had a fixed place in society, the early modern society of Shakespeare's time was starting to allow movement among roles and, as a result, the experience of a gap between our deepest sense of self and how we might appear to those around us.
Shakespeare's character Hamlet has this exact kind of problem. Is he simply a prince who must avenge his father's death, like all princes should? Or is he his own person, free to choose how he will be in the world?
As Shakespeare himself puts it in his play As You Like It, all the world's a stage, and all men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts.
Looks like it's back to the 21st century for us.
Let's ask our audience what they think. Is the world a stage? What parts will you play?